well, don't try to do it all yourself. There's a great book out there that people have heard of called Who Not How. I recommend that to almost every newer entrepreneur that I meet or talk to, because it's about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus to help you grow. So that would be one major piece of advice. The other thing I think that's really important is patience and realistic expectations, in the sense that, again, I came in, wide-eyed, thinking everything was just gonna be taking off and I was gonna be making money instantaneously. And I'm sure every business owner who's listening will probably chuckle at that, because the thing that you learn very quickly is that building a business takes time.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Corinne Auman. And Corinne is started her journey in high school. Her grandparents happened to live next door, and so while she was actually in middle school, Grandpa ended up passing away, and or Grandma needed a lot of needs, so kind of changed the trajectory or set things on that or a course for later on. But after that, her mom and sister struggled to find or figure out ways to take or give the care to the grandma that was needed. During that time, went off to college and got a I think it was a developmental psychology degree, and she was interested in becoming a teacher, and so taught at the college level for a period of time, but was still always wanting to figure out a way to help to take care of others and help them to navigate kind of the resources and what's available there. And so with that in mind, ended up starting a business to help adult children navigate the options and pathways to take care of their parents. And so with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. So I just gave a quick intro to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind a bit and unpack it a little bit more and tell us a little bit about how the journey got started with the passing of your grandfather and the taking care of your grandmother.
Yeah, that might have been the fastest time that story has ever been told. That was really quick. Good job. So yeah, we lived right next door to my grandparents, and after my grandfather passed away, my mom and her sister realized very quickly that my grandmother needed a lot more assistance than they realized. My grandfather had been doing a really good job of taking care of my grandmother and also kind of protecting her, not letting the rest of the family see just how great her care needs were. So after he passed away, they suddenly realized, oh, she has some cognitive changes. We really don't feel comfortable with her being alone in the home. So very quickly, they were trying to figure out what are the resources that are available, what can we do to take care of her. And, as a young person in the home in middle school and high school, I kind of watched all this unfold. And my mom and her sister did their very best, but they made mistakes along the way. There were things that happened, that they wish they'd done differently. And I just remember thinking at that time, why isn't there somebody who helps you figure these things out, right? Like if you need to take care of an aging loved one, why isn't there somebody you call who is going to assist you with finding resources and how do we pay for these things, all those steps? So yeah, fast forward, I go off to college. I get a psychology degree. I go on to grad school, and I actually do my PhD in developmental psychology, but my specialty is adulthood and aging. I knew I wanted to work with older adults and their families. I did teach at a university for several years, and then I finally looked at my
just curious, just before we get into what you're doing today. So you went into teaching. So you got into the developmental psychology, which kind of matches with, helping or take care of people and understanding a lot of that, and also the cognitive and just a lot of surrounding that. Now, what made you decide to, for a period of time, to go into teaching and go down the call or teach at a college level?
Well, so I come from a family of teachers. My mom was a teacher, her sister's a teacher, my grandfather was a teacher, lots of teachers. And that was very interesting to me. I loved school. I was a nerd. And I think nerds go into teaching because you enjoy school, so you think it's fun. And I certainly wasn't ready to start my business at that point. I told people, even in grad school, hey, someday I want to run a business like this. But I wasn't ready to do that when I first got out of graduate school. And, a lot when you're getting your PhD, you're kind of expected to go down an academic path, like get a job at a university or a research job, things like that. So that's kind of how I stepped into the college world and that sort of teaching. I still teach. Part-time at a university in the gerontology department, even now, because I love it. That's really fun to me. But it took me a while to get up the nerve to step out and start my business. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. And I think that's certainly not atypical for a lot of people. You go into, I'll say, that the comfortable path, or the one that, that is the typical path that people go. And then after going down that path for a period of time, you make the decision that you want to go in a different direction or explore other avenues. And so you did the teaching for a period of time, and you still do that. Now, what was kind of or maybe there was a slow iteration? Was there a tipping point as to you saying, okay, I've been doing teaching, but I still kind of feel like I'd want to go down the helping people to navigate taking care of their parents? Kind of what was how did you what was the trigger, or what was the tipping point for or pursuing that again?
Well, so the university that I was teaching at the time was having less and less need. I was, just a part-time person. I'm not a full-time academic at that point. And so they were having less and less need for me to be teaching a full load of classes every semester. And so as that kind of opened up my time, rather than look for additional academic work, I kind of looked at my husband and said, I've been talking about starting that business, as long as you've known me. Things have only gotten more complicated, as time has passed, from the time my mom and her sister were dealing with it to 2012, when I actually started my business. Things had gotten even more complicated in terms of options and resources and things like that. And I basically said, if not now, when am I going to do it? And so that was kind of the tipping point for getting started.
So now you say, okay, that's kind of the tipping point. Okay, we're going to get started now. There's always a bit of that difference between, hey, I'd like to get started, or here's what I'd like to do, versus actually get it set up and going and get going down that path. And so walk us through a little bit, as you said, okay, got that tipping point or that trigger point. Now, how did you go about actually setting up a business or setting up a business around that to figure out how you wanted to actually pursue it?
Yeah, so I just started looking around, right? Like doing searches on the internet to say, is there anybody out here who is already doing this kind of work? Is there a model I could follow? What's out there? Because I really did not know at that point what was available in the area, like what this career path, did this career path even have a name, right? Like what am I going to call myself? What am I going to be? Is anybody doing this? So just a lot of research in the beginning, trying to find other people doing this kind of thing. And I ultimately did find someone in my local area who was running a business doing this, but they had been, and then they had kind of had some health problems of their own and were stepping out and looking to sell that business. And ultimately I ended up purchasing I purchased their business and like their name and their website and those sorts of things. They really didn't have a huge client base in that moment because they had been kind of dwindling down, but I was able to at least kind of step into a pre-made package that had some things already set up and some name recognition that was helpful to me to get going. Now, once they stepped out. Once I bought the business, they were not involved at all. And I had to, basically build it back up because it had kind of dwindled away.
No, makes sense. So, but you had at least that ability to have, to a degree, something that was set up or a starting point or a kickoff point, as opposed to having to do it from scratch. And so now they kind of started to step back, or otherwise, not be able, or wanting to, or willing to, or able to, whatever it is, continue to pursue it. And so you or continue to have to figure things out. So walk us through a little bit as to what that path was. How did you go about continuing on, or growing it, or expanding it, or otherwise pursuing that?
Yeah. So, the nice thing was I had some basics, and I had somebody who kind of said, okay, here's the things you should do. And they introduced me to like networking groups in the area. In my area, there's something called the Triad Retirement Living Association. These different kind of organizations, networking groups that were all the people I needed to know. And so they got me introduced to, okay, join this group, do this next, those sorts of warm introductions that were super helpful, especially for somebody like me who had never really been in the business world, right? Like when I started, I'm coming from academia. I know a lot about older adults. I don't know anything about building a business, growing a business. How do you network? Like, oh, I give my business card to people. Okay. Like that, none of that was really in my wheelhouse, and was actually quite uncomfortable in the beginning because I just had never done it before. But that at least got me pointed in the right direction in terms of knowing who to go talk to, kind of knowing who the players were in the industry, and getting me out the door, because I'm not sure if I hadn't had somebody there to say, here's the next things you should do, if I would have really even known. It wasn't that I wasn't willing to do them. It just, I'd never had any training in that before. So it was a brand new experience to go to a networking breakfast and go around and introduce myself to people and say, hey, I'm starting this new company and you should refer clients to me, that kind of thing.
No, makes sense. And it sounds like you got to, or kind of, sometimes that, I'll say, is ignorance, so to speak, is bliss, in the sense that, probably if anybody, if you were to getting into a business were to know all the things that you probably should do, or that you had to do when you started out, nobody would ever get into it. And yet, as you learn and as you go about and do those things along the way, it provides that opportunity to learn and to grow and to continue to iterate and evolve. And so now, what or when did you start the business, and kind of walk through how, where is it at today?
Yeah, so I started in 2012, and it was just me back then. It was for the first couple of years. Now, today, there are 5 staff members, myself, a social worker, another care manager, gerontology type person, and 2 nurses on staff. So we've grown quite a bit. Now we do a lot more than we did originally. Originally, we were just doing helping people find communities or find resources in the area. Now we will act as someone's healthcare power of attorney. We will be someone's guardian. I'm a nationally certified guardian now. We will send our nurses out to do things like help fill pill boxes, do checks on people. If they had a fall and they hurt their ankle, the nurse will go have a look rather than have them go to urgent care at first, to try to determine, okay, do we need to go? Do we not? Things like that. We've really expanded our services exponentially at this point because of the diversity of our staff. As I've added different people, we've been able to bring on their skill sets to really enhance what the company can offer.
No, that's awesome. Definitely sounds like there's been an ability to expand and evolve the business, and to grow it as the opportunity presents. So definitely a fun iteration to see continue forward. So now, as we've kind of caught up to the present day of the journey, and even looking a bit into the future as to where things are headed, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? And what did you learn from it?
I think the thing that I don't know if it's the worst, but I think it was the most harmful to the business, was trying to do it all myself for a very long time. I was very reluctant. Again, I'm brand new to business, right? I was very reluctant to hiring someone or bringing someone else on, because that felt like a whole bunch of work I didn't know how to do, right? Like, how do you hire somebody? How do you deal with payroll? How do you deal with taxes? How do you deal with all those things that an employee brings? And so I put it off. I put it off for as long as possible, out of fear mostly, and ignorance, in terms of hadn't really thought through, hey, you could get an accountant, and an accountant would really help you with that. Things that seem so simple now, but because I was new to it and I didn't have that background, I really tried to do everything myself for a really long time. And I shouldn't have. I should have hired somebody sooner. I should have gotten an accountant sooner. I should have gotten those pieces and moved forward, rather than letting the fear kind of hold me back.
Yeah, and I think that's always that comes along with, sometimes it's fear holding you back, or hey, I can't afford this, or hey, it's going to take me so much longer to train someone or to bring them up to speed, and it's just easier for me to do it myself, and all those things. And there's maybe some legitimacy to them early on, in the sense that you have to wear all the hats when you get going, because you don't have the time or the budget to be able to do it otherwise. But as you got things going, sounds like you can continue to figure that out. So definitely an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Well, don't try to do it all yourself. There's a great book out there that people have heard of, called Who Not How. I recommend that to almost every newer entrepreneur that I meet or talk to, because it's about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus to help you grow. So that would be one major piece of advice. The other thing I think that's really important is patience and realistic expectations, in the sense that, again, I came in, wide-eyed, thinking everything was just gonna be taking off, and I was going to be making money instantaneously. And I'm sure every business owner who's listening will probably chuckle at that, because the thing that you learn very quickly is that building a business takes time, and you need to plan for probably a couple of years of building before you're really going to see comfortable profits start to come in. And I think if I had known that, I might not have started a business. I went in with those blinders on, like, it's going to be great. So that kind of patience and realistic expectations about how long it takes to grow a business. I mean, you can be doing a great job, you can have a great business idea and a great model, and that still doesn't mean that it's going to be making a profit overnight. And you just got to be ready for that. And if you can hang in there through those first year, 2 years, those kinds of things, then it can be great. But just have realistic expectations about what that's going to take.
No, and I think that, and I think everybody, I don't know, tricks themselves, but always thinks they're going to be the exception to the rule. That, yeah, that's for everybody else, but I'll be the exception, and I'll be the one that is instantaneously profitable, and everybody will be knocking down my door to pay me money. And yet, I think setting that realistic expectation and having that understanding definitely sets you up for success in the long run. So definitely a great piece of advice, and an awesome takeaway.
If you have the expectation that it's going to take a long time, and then you start and it does just go off gangbusters, terrific. I mean, let's be surprised. That's a great surprise. But I think that's a much better experience, to have realistic expectations and then be surprised when it takes off, versus thinking, really believing it's going to take off, and then really getting down on yourself and beating yourself up when it doesn't, because that's how it feels. It feels very personal when it does not take off immediately. Like, what did I do wrong? Did I not have a good idea? Do people not just like me, or, my product, whatever it is? And that can be really disheartening when you're a brand new entrepreneur.
No, I think that's definitely great, or a great piece of advice. And I think everybody, you have the unrealistic expectation that everybody's an overnight success, and why am I not the same way as everybody else? And then as you always peel back those layers, you get a better understanding that what it actually takes and what others have also gone through. So definitely some great takeaways. Well, now as we are wrapping up towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Sure. So my company name is Choice Care Navigators, and our website is navigateseniorcare.com. You can also reach out to me. I have my own personal website because I wrote a book last year, and that personal website is just CorinneAuman.com. And you can learn more about me and the book and just kind of everything I'm into in terms of speaking and trying to get the word out about, how we grow old and all the things we can look forward to as we grow older in the world.
No, that's awesome. And I think that I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, make a new connection, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be guests on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.